There is this incredibly specific, almost universally dreaded feeling that hits right around 7:00 p.m. on a Sunday.
Oh, yeah. The classic Sunday dread.
Exactly. It's that exact moment when the weekend is just, officially on life support. The sun is starting to go down, and Monday is looming like this giant storm cloud on the horizon.
Right, and it completely shifts the energy.
It really does. And the entire social script of our lives is about to flip on its head. I mean, for the last 48 hours, every conversation you've had has probably started with some variation of, what are you going to do this weekend? Or how is your Saturday going?
Yeah, we talk about choices. We talk about leisure.
Right. We talk about agency. But as soon as that alarm goes off on Monday morning, the script changes completely. We transition into the single most common, most inevitable question that we face in modern society.
It really is. You meet someone new, you shake their hand.
And within 10 seconds, the question drops. What do you do?
It is the ultimate default setting of adult conversation, honestly.
It is. And we just accept it.
Yeah, think about how bizarre it is if you actually step back and observe it anthropologically. We transition overnight from discussing our free time, our voluntary choices, to instantly categorizing ourselves.
And everyone we meet, right.
Exactly. We categorize everyone by their economic output and their daily grind. It's just fascinating how quickly that shift happens and how entirely normal it feels to us.
Yeah, we don't even question the premise of the question anymore. We spend so much of our waking lives answering it.
We really do.
We talk about the daily grind, explaining our jobs to strangers at dinner parties or, to our families over the holidays.
Or to ourselves when we're staring at the ceiling at 2 a.m.
Oh, absolutely. So that is exactly what we are going on a mission to explore today. We're doing a deep dive into a really fascinating framework that basically deconstructs exactly how we talk about work.
And we aren't just looking at this like a standard vocabulary lesson, right?
No, not at all. We are examining how the language we use, the specific grammar, the verbs, the idioms we choose to describe our daily routines, how all of that actually shapes our psychological relationship with our careers.
Which is such a massive topic. And the way we are going to look at this today relies on a multi-level linguistic progression.
Right, like language learning levels.
Exactly. In language learning, there is a standard framework used to measure fluency, moving from beginner to intermediate all the way up to absolute mastery. But what we are going to do today is map that fluency framework directly onto our professional lives.
It's such a cool concept.
It really is. We are going to watch how, as our language about work becomes more sophisticated, our relationship to our jobs completely transforms.
So we start at the bottom and work our way up.
Yeah, we move from the absolute basic foundational statements of survival and identity up through the friction of daily tasks.
Right, the daily grind stuff.
Exactly, into the psychological toll of the grind. And then finally, to a highly sophisticated, almost sociological analysis of our roles in the modern economy.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I am someone who just marvels at how much oxygen we give to work in our daily conversations. I mean, we literally construct our entire social reality around it.
We really do. It's everywhere.
So to really understand how language traps us or frees us, I guess, in the workplace, we have to start at the absolute bottom, the foundation.
The beginner level.
Right. If we're using that fluency framework, this is where we learn the absolute building blocks of how we define our daily existence to strangers.
Because before we can philosophize about the gig economy or, debate the toxic traits of corporate culture, we have to look at the simple facts.
The absolute most basic, fundamental way we answer, what do you do? And it's with a very specific 3-word structure. I am on, followed by your job title.
Right. I'm a doctor. I'm a graphic designer.
I'm an engineer. I'm an accountant.
It seems incredibly simple on the surface, just basic grammar. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, it is deeply profound.
How so?
Well, notice the structure. It is not I work in medicine or I perform accounting tasks.
Right. Or I currently spend my days designing graphics.
Exactly. It is I am. We are using the verb of being, the verb of existence. From the very first moment we introduce ourselves in a professional context, we are linking our core existential identity to our labor.
Wow, yeah.
Saying, I am a teacher implies that teaching is not just an activity you engage in for a set number of hours. It is fundamentally what you are.
Which is, have you ever noticed how weird that actually is?
It is very weird.
Think about it for a second. If someone asks me what my hobbies are, I don't say, I am a television watcher or I'm a bicycle rider.
No, you'd sound like an alien.
Right. I say, I ride bikes, or I watch TV. The action is something I do, is not who I am. But with work, we fuse our entire identity with the job title. I am a teacher rather than I do teaching.
And that fusion is powerful.
Yeah, but by doing that right out of the gate, aren't we just boxing ourselves in? To me, it's like pouring the concrete foundation of a house.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Yeah, because it's rigid, it's absolute, and it has to hold up everything else. But once that concrete is poured and set, you can't easily move the walls. You are trapped in the shape of that foundation.
That concrete foundation analogy is perfect, but let's look at why we actually do it. Because the concrete is essential for social clarity.
Social clarity.
Yeah. When you meet a stranger, human beings have this profound psychological need to quickly establish a shorthand for where everyone fits in the social order.
Oh, I see.
So I am a nurse immediately gives the listener a vast amount of contextual information. Within a fraction of a second, I have made assumptions about your likely schedule, your general income bracket.
Your societal contribution, your education level.
Exactly. Even the physical environment you inhabit every day. It is rigid because it needs to be an undeniable fact to serve as that foundational baseline in a complex society. We basically use identity as a shortcut for trust and categorization.
That makes total sense. We need the shortcut because we don't have 3 hours to explain the nuances of our daily lives to someone we just met at a coffee shop.
Right. Nobody wants to hear a 3-hour monologue about your day.
Definitely not. And this rigidity, this absolute factual baseline, extends perfectly into the grammar we use next. We don't just use the verb to be, we also use the simple present tense to outline our daily routines.
The routine facts.
Yeah, we say things like, I get up at 7 a.m., I go to work by bus, I finish at 5 p.m. It turns our daily actions into pure, unadulterated facts.
Precisely. And let's think about how the simple present tense functions in linguistics. Yeah. It is strictly reserved for universal truths, permanent habits, and undeniable realities.
Like scientific facts.
Yes, exactly. We use it to say things like, water boils at 100 degrees Celsius, or the sun rises in the east, or gravity pulls objects downward.
Wow, okay.
So when you say, I go to work at 8 a.m., you are framing your daily routine in the exact same grammatical tense as the laws of physics.
That is wild to think about.
You are psychologically reinforcing the permanence and the inevitability of the daily grind. You aren't saying, I am currently experimenting with taking the bus to this building every day. You are stating a universal law of your own life.
Okay, I love that connection. It's not a choice anymore. It's just inevitable. Gravity pulls, the sun shines, and I catch the 8.15 bus to downtown.
Right. It makes the routine feel inescapable.
You are just a celestial body in orbit around your office. And speaking of these inescapable routines, there's this one specific linguistic quirk we use to describe our mornings that I find so fascinating in the source material.
Which one?
Well, native English speakers almost always say, have breakfast instead of eat breakfast. You don't say to a coworker, I woke up at 6 and I ate breakfast. You say, I had breakfast.
That's very true.
Why on earth do we do that? What is the actual difference?
This raises a really important question about how we view our transition from sleep to work. You know, that shift from private citizen to economic agent.
Right.
Because eating is a mechanical biological function. It is the physical act of mastication. It is putting fuel into a biological machine.
Like a dog eats its food, a cow eats grass.
Exactly. But having breakfast reframes the meal as an experience, a routine, a scheduled block of time in our day. It softens the mechanical, rushed nature of the morning routine.
It makes it sound a bit more civilized.
Yes. Having breakfast implies a moment of possession and experience. Maybe you are sitting down with a cup of coffee, looking at the morning news, mentally preparing yourself for the demands of the day.
Rather than just chewing and swallowing calories so you don't collapse before your first meeting.
Exactly. It's a psychological framing.
That is so true.
Yeah.
Eating breakfast sounds like I'm standing over the kitchen sink, aggressively shoving a piece of dry toast into my mouth while tying my shoes.
Which, let's be honest, is often what is actually happening.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
But having breakfast sounds like I'm a civilized human being preparing for my day. It's almost like having breakfast is a linguistic cushion we use to protect ourselves from the harsh reality that we are just fueling up the machine before we go sell our labor.
That's a great way to put it.
So this whole foundation, the IMA identity statements, the simple present tense of undeniable facts, the routines we have, it's all about establishing a solid, unquestionable reality. We are pouring the concrete.
But as we all know, pouring the foundation is just the very beginning of the construction project.
Right.
A concrete foundation is flat, gray, and featureless. It tells you where the house is and it tells you the general shape of it, but it doesn't tell you anything about what it is actually like to live inside those walls.
You can't see the furniture or the leaky pipes yet.
Exactly. To describe the actual lived experience of a job, we have to evolve our language. We have to move up a level in fluency.
And that brings us to the next stage of our deep dive, the intermediate level. This is where we start adding color and, honestly, friction to our workday.
Friction is the perfect word for it.
Because once the reality of Monday morning actually hits, simply saying, I'm an accountant and I start at 9, doesn't capture the chaos of what actually happens between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m.
Not at all.
So our language has to shift. We move away from simply stating a job title to defining our tasks. And the key phrase that emerges here in the text is, I'm responsible for.
Right.
So instead of just saying, I am graphic designer, you start saying things like, I'm responsible for designing the company's marketing materials. Or if you're a teacher, I'm responsible for planning the curriculum.
Now, notice the profound psychological shift that happens the exact moment you introduce that phrase.
What do you mean?
We have moved from a passive state of existence, I am, to a statement of burden, ownership, and consequence. The word responsibility carries heavy weight.
It definitely does.
It implies that if the task fails, if the marketing materials are late or the curriculum is flawed, the fault lies squarely with you. It is a much more mature, nuanced way to describe work because it acknowledges the expectations placed upon you by the system.
You aren't just existing anymore.
Right. You are no longer just existing in the office. You are a load-bearing pillar in the company's structure.
You are taking ownership of the friction. And we quickly develop an entire vocabulary dedicated entirely to this friction, the real, tangible elements of the office grind.
The day-to-day reality.
Yeah, we stop talking about universal truths and start talking about colleagues, meetings, the commute. Like my commute is 45 minutes by train.
The commute.
Let's just pause on the commute for a second. We talk about it like it's a distance, but we almost always measure it in time. We're essentially saying, I am surrendering 45 minutes of my existence to a metal tube every morning just to arrive at the place where my responsibility begins.
That's a slightly depressing but very accurate way to frame it.
And then, once you arrive, there is the looming, terrifying presence of the tight deadline.
The deadline is one of the most fascinating concepts in professional language.
I have to stop on tight deadline because here's where it gets really interesting to me. Think about the words themselves. Deadline literally has the word dead in it.
Yes, it does.
It's a line of death for a project. It historically comes from prison camps, referring to a physical line that prisoners could not cross without being shot.
Which is incredibly dark.
It is. And we take this incredibly morbid, absolute word, and we pair it with the adjective tight, a tight deadline. It makes me think of an Indiana Jones movie where the giant stone door is closing and it's getting tighter and tighter.
The gap is shrinking.
Yeah. The gap is shrinking, and you have to slide your work under it the last possible second before the stone crushes you. It's such a visceral, almost claustrophobic way to describe time.
That visceral, claustrophobic imagery is exactly why this level of language is so crucial. A tight deadline is not just a date on a calendar. It is a physical sensation of constraint in your chest.
Wow, yeah. You can feel it.
You really can. And to navigate that constraint, to survive the Indiana Jones door, we start using adverbs of frequency to establish a rhythm.
Right, the rhythm of the day.
We introduce words like usually, often, sometimes, rarely, and never. Like, I usually start by checking emails, or I often have back-to-back meetings.
Or I sometimes have to work late to meet a tight deadline.
Exactly. These words act like the heartbeat, the pulse of the professional narrative.
They introduce chaos.
Yeah.
I mean, the foundation we talked about earlier was a universal truth. I go to work, it's clean. But this intermediate level introduces the messy reality. I sometimes have to work late.
Yes.
It's the difference between the pristine architectural blueprint of the house and the reality of the plumbing backing up and flooding the kitchen on a random Tuesday.
Exactly. The sometimes and the often represent the unpredictable demands of other humans in your environment. You can't control everything.
Right.
And as we navigate this unpredictability, we start expressing opinions and feelings about our work. We start contrasting the best part of a job with the most difficult part.
So let's talk about the difficult part. A prime example of the language we use for the frustrating aspects of work is dealing with. As in, the most difficult part of my job is dealing with so many emails.
Yes, dealing with is very common.
Now, I want to push back on this phrase a bit. If you are a graphic designer or a software engineer or a project manager, and you describe your day as mostly dealing with emails or dealing with clients, doesn't that imply something negative?
What do you mean?
Doesn't it imply that the core of modern work is mostly just managing chaos and putting out fires? Aren't we basically admitting that we aren't actually creating or producing something meaningful? We're just performing triage.
That is a very sharp observation, and it cuts right to the heart of the modern knowledge worker dilemma. Dealing with is a really fascinating phrasal verb.
Because of how we use it.
Exactly. Think about how we use it outside of work. You don't deal with a beautiful sunset. You don't deal with eating your favorite meal.
Right. Yeah.
You deal with a leaky pipe. You deal with a toddler having a tantrum in a grocery store. You deal with a flat tire.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So by describing our daily professional tasks as things we must deal with, we are linguistically framing our workday as a series of obstacles to be overcome.
Rather than a creative process.
Rather than a creative process to be enjoyed or a meaningful contribution to society. It highlights a massive transition in the modern workplace.
Yes. You're not painting the masterpiece.
Yeah.
You're dealing with the emails from the paint supplier who sent the wrong shade of blue.
Exactly.
And you're dealing with the canvas vendor who is delaying your shipment. It's endless, exhausting triage. It feels incredibly draining just to say it.
It is draining, absolutely. But paradoxically, this language is also incredibly empowering from a psychological standpoint.
Empowering? How so?
By moving beyond the simple I am a statement and utilizing this intermediate vocabulary, the speaker becomes an active participant in their own narrative.
Okay, then I follow.
You are no longer just a passive object showing up at a building at 9 a.m. You are a navigator. You're actively managing complex relationships, like getting along with colleagues.
Right.
You are navigating spatial and temporal realities, like the commute and the tight deadlines. You are expressing critical preferences, the best part versus the most difficult part. Even if you are just dealing with things, you are asserting your agency within the system. You are painting a much richer, more dynamic picture of your reality.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It gives us a sense of control.
Yeah.
I might be dealing with a leaky pipe, but at least I'm the one holding the wrench.
Precisely.
But here's the problem. As that picture gets richer, and the tasks multiply, and those deadlines get tighter, and the Indiana Jones stone door starts closing faster, the narrative inevitably has to shift again.
It has to, yes.
Because eventually, dealing with an endless stream of emails and tight deadlines turns into a completely different kind of psychological weight. And this brings us to the third phase of our deep dive.
The psychology of the grind.
Yes. This is where our language has to evolve to handle actual crushing stress.
The progression here is entirely logical, if somewhat grim. Once you have defined your tasks and established your responsibilities, the inevitable next step in almost any career is that the volume of those tasks increases.
The reward for good work is more work.
Exactly. You're rewarded for doing your job well by being given more job to do. And this introduces a critical new concept, the workload, and specifically the dreaded heavy workload.
Heavy workload. I love analyzing this because, once again, we are using the laws of physical mass to describe an entirely abstract concept.
It's a brilliant metaphor.
It is. You cannot put an email on a physical scale. You cannot weigh a Zoom meeting. But we universally describe it as heavy. It feels physically burdensome.
And our vocabulary creates this brilliant, nuanced dichotomy here to describe the different flavors of this weight. We start categorizing work as either stressful or demanding.
And those are very different things, right?
Very different.
The classic example of a demanding job is a surgeon, a job that requires immense, hyper-focused skill and attention. So demanding isn't necessarily bad stress. It's a heavy weight that requires incredible focus and exacts a toll.
What's fascinating here is the precise nuance we are unlocking to diagnose our environment. A job can be stressful simply because it is disorganized, chaotic, and poorly managed.
Like bad management creates stress.
Right. A fast food worker dealing with a broken register and a long line is experiencing high stress. But a job is demanding when the stakes are incredibly high and the margin for error is zero, as with your surgeon example.
Right. The stakes define it.
The word demanding implies a personification of the job itself. The job is actively asking something of you. It is demanding your excellence, your absolute focus, your physical stamina.
And the crucial counterpart to a demanding job is that it can also be rewarding. Right.
Exactly. A demanding job can give you a profound sense of purpose if you successfully meet those demands. It requires a lot, but it gives something back.
Right. If you perform a successful surgery, you saved a life. It was demanding, but the reward is immense. But, and this is the big, but what happens when the demands completely outstrip your capacity?
That's where things break down.
What happens when the job just keeps taking, and there is no reward? That is when we enter a much darker linguistic territory.
We do.
Which brings us to my absolute favorite idiom in this entire psychological framework. It perfectly describes what happens when you are drowning in those demands, being swamped with work.
It is a remarkably evocative phrase.
It's brilliant. Let's explicitly look at the imagery here. Imagine being literally stuck in a swamp. If you have ever been in a swamp or even just seen a documentary about one, you know it's not just deep water like a swimming pool.
No, it's terrible.
It's thick, suffocating mud. It's tangled roots hidden under the surface. Every single step takes immense, exhausting physical effort.
Yeah.
You are sinking. You cannot move fast no matter how hard you try. The air is thick and humid, and there are probably alligators circling you.
It's a nightmare scenario.
Right. And in the office, those alligators are your boss asking for the quarterly reports or the client threatening to pull their account. When you say, I am swamped, you aren't just saying I am busy.
No, you're saying something much more severe.
You are saying, my environment is actively, maliciously trying to pull me under, and I am fighting for my life.
The swamp metaphor is arguably the most accurate linguistic representation of the modern knowledge worker's plight. It perfectly encapsulates the feeling of being overwhelmed by administrative and logistical burdens that prevent you from doing the actual work.
Because you can't swim freely in a swamp.
Exactly. You can only trudge. You're bogged down by meetings that could have been emails, and emails that require meetings to resolve.
It's an endless cycle.
And if you remain swamped for too long, if you spend months or years fighting the mud and the alligators, we reach the severe, inevitable consequence. The language shifts from describing the environment to diagnosing a medical reality.
Burnout.
Burnout. Just the word sounds heavy.
Yes. Burnout is defined as a state of profound physical, emotional, and mental exhaustion caused by prolonged chronic stress.
Wow.
Notice how the language has entirely shifted here. At the beginner level, we were talking about what you do. I am a teacher. At this level, we are talking about what the work is doing to you.
It has fundamentally altered your biology.
Yes.
It literally means the fuel is gone, the fire is out, there's nothing left to burn, you are just a charred piece of wood sitting at a desk.
It's a total depletion.
We are talking about severe emotional and psychological trauma vocabulary now, strictly in the context of our standard 9-to-5 office jobs. We use the language of fire and drowning to describe sending PDFs to Susan in accounting.
It is a bit absurd when you frame it like that, but the physiological response is real.
It really is. But it's not just the volume of tasks that causes this burnout. It's the people. The people are the alligators in the swamp.
Workplace dynamics play a huge role.
Right. Our vocabulary expands to cover workplace dynamics, specifically the power structures. We compare the positive, harmonious idea of getting on with your colleagues to the negative, oppressive nature of a boss who tends to micromanage.
Micromanagement is a cornerstone of workplace dissatisfaction.
Whenever I hear the word micromanager, someone who controls every single microscopic detail of your work, I immediately think of driving a car.
Okay, how so?
Imagine you are driving on the highway at 65 miles an hour. You know how to drive, you have your license, but you have a passenger sitting right next to you who keeps reaching over to grab the steering wheel.
Oh, that sounds terrifying.
They keep adjusting your rearview mirror while you're looking at it. They're telling you exactly when to press a brake and hovering their foot over your foot. That is a micromanager.
That is a perfect description.
It completely destroys your confidence. It makes you second-guess your own instincts, and ironically, it makes you far more likely to crash the car than if they had just sat back and let you drive.
That is a brilliant and highly accurate psychological analogy. What that passenger is doing is removing your autonomy.
Exactly.
Let's go back to our earlier point in the intermediate level. We talked about how saying I am responsible for is a mature step because it implies ownership.
Right.
But to truly be responsible for an outcome, you must have the autonomy to execute the process. When a boss micromanages when they grab the steering wheel, they are essentially stripping you of that responsibility while still holding you entirely accountable for whether or not the car crashes.
That is so unfair.
You have all the liability and none of the control. It is a recipe for immense acute stress. It represents a complete breakdown of trust in the professional relationship.
It's maddening. It is the fastest way to get swamped and reach burnout. But then Juxtaposed against all this stress, this micromanagement, this heavy workload, our language also provides a vocabulary for the ambition to push forward anyway.
The drive to succeed.
The ambition to survive the swamp. We talk about the climb. We use phrases like getting a promotion, climbing the career ladder, and facing a steep learning curve.
The steep learning curve.
Now, I have to stop here and challenge this specific phrase. We use this phrase to describe having to learn a massive amount of difficult things in a very short period of time. And it always bothers me.
Why does it bother you?
Because we say steep learning curve, like it's a badge of honor in the corporate world. Oh, the new job is great. It's a steep learning curve, but I'm managing. But think about the geometry of that.
The geometry.
Yeah. We usually think of a curve as something gradual and pleasant. But if a curve is steep, it's basically a sheer cliff face. How can we pair a concept that is so obviously exhausting and dangerous, free climbing, a sheer cliff face of new information, with the idea of enjoying the challenge? Isn't a steep learning curve just another form of being completely swamped, but we've dressed it up in a nice suit?
I love that you brought this up because steep learning curve is one of the most widely misunderstood idioms in the English language.
Wait, really? How so?
Well, technically, in mathematical terms, a steep learning curve actually means something very positive.
No kidding.
No, really. If you graph it out where the y-axis is knowledge acquired and the x-axis is time spent, a steep vertical line means you acquired a massive amount of mastery in almost zero time. It literally means the subject is incredibly easy to learn.
Wait, really? A steep learning curve mathematically means it's easy?
Yes. Because you go straight up the knowledge axis without moving very far along the time axis.
Oh my gosh, I never realized that.
However, colloquially, socially, you are exactly right. People have entirely flipped the meaning. When people say it in an office, they are picturing the x-axis as effort and the y-axis as the obstacle.
Right, they see the cliff face.
Exactly. They use it to mean that the barrier to entry is a massive, exhausting, vertical rock climb.
So why do we frame this exhausting rock climb as enjoying the challenge?
Because this level of language is fundamentally about diagnosing our environment and asserting our resilience within it. Admitting that a new role has a steep learning curve, but claiming you enjoy the challenge is a psychological defense mechanism.
Oh, like a way to protect your ego.
And a social signal. It tells your peers, the mountain is high, the climb is dangerous, but my legs are strong and my grip is sure.
Ah, I see. It's a flex. It's a linguistic way to show dominance over the grind. You were saying, I might be in the swamp, but I am wrestling the alligators and winning.
Precisely. And this is why having this nuanced vocabulary is so vital. The ability to articulate the difference between a job that is merely stressful due to bad management and a job that is demanding but rewarding because of high stakes.
It gives you clarity.
Yes. The ability to diagnose a superior as a micromanager rather than just vaguely complaining that my boss is mean. This is a crucial survival skill in the modern workforce.
I can see that.
This vocabulary allows you to externalize the problems. You are not failing. You are experiencing a heavy workload. You are not broken or weak. You are suffering from systemic burnout. The words give you the power to categorize your suffering and frame your ambition.
So let's pause and think about what this all means when we put it together. We've gone from the concrete foundation of I am a teacher to the methy reality of I am swamped with a heavy workload and my micromanaging boss is grabbing the steering wheel, but I'm trying to climb this sheer cliff face of a career ladder.
It's quite a journey.
It feels like we poured the foundation, built the house, moved in, and now the roof is leaking, the basement is flooding, and we are arguing about who has to fix it while trying to pretend we love living there.
That is a wonderfully bleak but accurate assessment. You are living inside the machine.
Yeah.
But here is where the evolution of our language takes its final, most fascinating turn. Once you understand the architecture of the house, and once you have deeply felt the emotional toll of maintaining it, the burnout, the swamping, you inevitably start to reach a point of intellectual maturity where you question why you built the house in the first place.
Oh, wow.
You stop looking at the leaky roof and you start looking out the window. You start to question the neighborhood. You start to question the zoning laws that forced you to build the house this way.
And that brings us to the final, most advanced section of our deep dive, the absolute mastery level of professional fluency, deconstructing the modern workplace.
The C1 and C2 levels of our analogy.
Right. Because once you know how to talk about climbing the career ladder, the next logical step is to step back, look at the big picture and ask, wait a minute, Is this ladder even leaning against the right wall?
Exactly.
At this highest level, we are moving completely outside the system to critique the system itself. And we have to start with a massive, highly disruptive concept in the source text: the death of the ladder itself.
It's a huge shift.
Our vocabulary is shifting to recognize that the traditional linear career ladder is becoming obsolete. It is out of date. It is no longer functioning.
If we connect this to the broader socioeconomic picture, declaring the career ladder obsolete is a profound shift in human history. Think about it. The career ladder was the defining metaphor of 20th century labor.
It was the American dream, right?
It was the American dream encapsulated in a shape. You start in the mailroom, you put your head down, you climb rung by rung, and 30 or 40 years later, you retire as a vice president with a pension and a gold watch.
Which just doesn't happen anymore.
Very rarely. The ladder implied stability. It implied a clear, linear path upwards. Most importantly, it implied a mutual binding loyalty between the employer and the employee.
Loyalty.
By identifying this concept as obsolete, we are linguistically acknowledging a fundamental, perhaps irreversible shift in the global economy. The rungs have been broken.
The rungs are broken, and the ladder has been chopped up for firewood. And so, our language has had to invent new vocabulary to describe the new economic realities we are forced to navigate.
We had to adapt.
Right. We contrast two huge defining concepts of the modern era: the portfolio career versus the gig economy.
Yeah.
So really break these down, because they sound vaguely related. Both involve doing multiple things instead of one single job, but they have wildly different vibes and realities.
Very true.
Let's start with the portfolio career, which is defined as a deliberate mix of part-time jobs, freelance projects, consultant roles, and maybe a personal side business. I am obsessed with this concept.
It is a very empowering framework for a lot of professionals today. How do you visualize it?
Think about it strictly like being an investor in the stock market. If you are a smart investor, you never put your entire life savings into one single stock, right?
No, that's too risky.
Right. If that company goes bankrupt, you lose everything overnight. Instead, you buy a diversified mutual fund. You spread your risk across tech, healthcare, energy, real estate.
Diversification.
Exactly. A portfolio career is taking that exact financial logic and applying it to your own life and labor. Instead of investing money, you are diversifying your own skills, your time, and your income streams.
So, practically speaking, what does that look like?
Well, you consult for 20 hours a week, you teach a class for 10 hours, and you run an Etsy shop on the weekends. You are protecting yourself against a market crash or a sudden layoff, because if one income stream dries up, your portfolio is still generating returns elsewhere.
It sounds brilliant in theory. A portfolio career implies a high level of agency, curation, and control. You are the CEO of your own diversified professional brand.
It sounds great, doesn't it?
It does. But let's look at the actual mechanism of that. And I want to push back on the mutual fund analogy a little bit.
Oh, please do. Where does the analogy break down?
Well, when you diversify a financial portfolio, the money doesn't get tired.
Oh.
$1 invested in a tech stock doesn't need to sleep, and it doesn't get stressed out by the $1 invested in real estate.
That is a very fair point.
But when you diversify your career, you are fracturing your own human attention. You only have 100% of your cognitive capacity. If you are juggling 3 different freelance clients, a part-time job, and a side hustle, you are constantly context switching.
You're wearing too many hats.
Exactly. You are essentially carrying the mental overhead of 5 different jobs. While it protects you from the sudden shock of a single layoff, it often leads directly back to that swamped and burnout phase we just talked about.
Wow. Yeah.
You are spreading your risk, but you are also spreading your sanity dangerously thin.
Oh, man. That is such a good point. The money doesn't get tired, but the human absolutely does. You avoid the catastrophic failure of losing your one job, but you invite the chronic exhaustion of never truly clocking out.
You are just constantly tending to your portfolio.
And that brings us to the darker reflection of this multi-job reality, the gig economy.
Yes, the gig economy is the other side of the post-ladder coin.
We define the gig economy as relying on short-term contracts or freelance work, typically mediated by an app or a platform, like driving for Uber, delivering food for DoorDash, or doing task-based freelance work.
Right.
Now, on the surface, the pro is always listed as flexibility. You set your own hours, be your own boss. But the con is a severe lack of job security, a complete lack of benefits like health insurance, and wildly unpredictable income.
It's very precarious.
It is. It's fascinating to me because linguistically, a portfolio career sounds glamorous. It sounds like you are sitting in a coffee shop in a turtleneck consulting for exciting startups.
It has a prestige to it.
It does. But the gig economy sounds incredibly precarious. You are frantically driving across town to deliver a burrito to make rent, and if your car breaks down, your entire livelihood vanishes instantly because you have zero safety net.
Exactly. And yet, linguistically and historically, they are born from the exact same phenomenon, the obsolescence of the career ladder.
They are two sides of the same coin.
Yes. Both models exist because the guaranteed linear path of the 20th century disappeared. The difference is leverage.
Leverage.
A portfolio career is usually driven by choice, highly specialized skills, and market leverage. The gig economy is very often driven by necessity, commoditized labor, and a lack of traditional stable options.
That makes total sense.
Being able to debate these societal trends to parse the difference between a curated portfolio and a desperate gig means you are no longer just a worker bee describing the inside of your hive. You are an economist and a sociologist analyzing the entire ecosystem.
And looking at that ecosystem leads us to perhaps the most profound, soul-searching distinction we can make in our professional language. This is the part that completely blew my mind in the text.
The three buckets.
Yes. We have three distinct words that we often use interchangeably, but at this highest level of fluency, they mean wildly different things. We're asked to categorize our work into one of three buckets: a job, a career, or a calling.
This is a beautiful distillation of our entire linguistic journey today.
Let's lay this out clearly because everyone needs to hear this. A job is something you do primarily for money. It is purely transactional.
Right, time for money.
Exactly. I give you 40 hours of my time. You give me a paycheck so I can buy groceries and pay rent. I do not care about the company's grand vision.
It is a fair trade.
Yeah. Then a career is a long-term professional journey. It implies progression, strategy, building equity over time, climbing a ladder, even if it's a portfolio ladder now. You are invested in your status and growth.
It's more than just the paycheck.
Right. But a calling or a vocation, this is defined as work you feel deeply inherently destined to do. It is tied directly to your core identity and your sense of purpose in the universe.
Notice how this brings us completely full circle back to the very first thing we discussed.
Oh, you mean the beginner level?
Yes. At the beginner level, we use the phrase I am a to blindly fuse our identity with our work. I am a cashier. I am a manager.
Right, we poured the concrete.
Exactly. But here, at the highest level of analysis, we learn to deliberately differentiate. If you recognize that you only have a transactional job, you can psychologically detach.
How so?
You might say, I work as a cashier, keeping your core identity completely safe and separate from your labor.
Ah, I see.
If you have a career, you might say, I am an executive, willingly blending your societal status with your identity. But a calling that is a profound alignment of personal purpose and societal contribution. I am a healer. I am an artist.
I want to stop right here, break the fourth wall, and ask you, the listener, directly. Look at your own life right now. Think about the alarm that went off this morning or the commute you were going to take tomorrow. Audit your own reality. Are you doing a job? Are you building a career? Or are you following a calling?
It's an important question to ask.
It is. Because recognizing which of those three buckets you are actually in can be a massive life-altering wake-up call. If you think you are pursuing a calling, but your company treats you like you are just doing a transactional job, that is a recipe for absolute heartbreak and burnout.
That specific mismatch, bringing the passion of a calling to a company that only offers the transaction of a job, is the source of profound modern anxiety.
It explains so much.
It is why we see so much burnout in fields like teaching, nursing, and the nonprofit sector. And this advanced vocabulary doesn't shy away from the psychological realities of these high-level environments.
No, it doesn't.
Once you are navigating careers and callings, the language introduces us to a fascinating psychological phenomenon, imposter syndrome.
Imposter syndrome. It's a huge buzzword now, but let's define it accurately. It is the persistent, nagging feeling of being a fraud, of being entirely incompetent, despite clear, outward evidence of your success.
Yes.
It's that terrifying fear that at any moment, Someone is going to tap you on the shoulder in a meeting and say, "We figured you out. You don't know what you're doing. You don't belong here. Pack up your desk."
It is the shadow side of ambition. And what is so deeply interesting about imposter syndrome is who it affects most.
Right. Because it's so wild, the more successful people become, the higher they climb that imaginary ladder, or the more diverse and complex their portfolio career gets, the more likely they are to feel imposter syndrome.
It seems counterintuitive, doesn't it?
It really does. Think about it. You almost never feel like an imposter when you are at the absolute foundational level, just stating the facts. I am a barista. I make coffee. I wake up at 7.
Right, there's no ambiguity there.
You know you woke up at 7. You know you made the coffee.
Yeah.
The tangible reality is undeniable.
Exactly. Let's trace this back historically. Think about physical labor versus knowledge work.
Okay.
A blacksmith 200 years ago rarely had imposter syndrome.
Why not?
Well, they hit a piece of hot iron with a hammer, and at the end of the day, there was a horseshoe. The value of the labor was tangible, undeniable, and immediate. You could hold it in your hand.
Right, you can't fake a horseshoe.
Exactly. But as we move up to the C level of professional fluency, we are dealing almost entirely in abstractions.
The knowledge work.
Yes. You are analyzing corporate strategy, you are managing complex human relationships, you are optimizing synergies.
All invisible things.
The abstraction of knowledge work creates a massive disconnect between effort and tangible value. When your entire week consists of sending emails, sitting in meetings, and adjusting spreadsheets, it is incredibly easy for this creeping doubt to set in.
Because what did you actually make?
Right. You ask yourself, did I actually create any value this week? Am I actually good at this? Or did I just trick everyone into paying me?
That is so profound. The abstraction of the work creates the space for the doubt to grow. Because you can't point to a horseshoe. You can only point to a PowerPoint presentation. And whether that PowerPoint is good or bad is entirely subjective, which makes you feel like a fraud.
Precisely.
And this feeling of being an imposter is heavily amplified by the specific environment you work in. Which brings us to the final critical concept in our framework: corporate culture.
The invisible rules of the office.
The vocabulary we use to describe those rules. We contrast a collaborative culture with a cutthroat culture.
The word cutthroat is one of the most aggressive idioms we have in the professional lexicon.
It is completely wild when you think about it literally. Cutthroat, it means you are willing to literally slice someone's throat open with a blade to get ahead.
It's violent gladiatorial imagery.
It is.
Yeah.
And we use it to describe an office building where people are wearing khakis and typing quietly on laptops.
It's quite a contrast.
But despite the physical safety of the office, we all know exactly what it feels like to be in that room. You are guarding your ideas so someone doesn't steal them. You are meticulously documenting everything in endless email chains just to cover your back in case someone tries to throw you under the bus.
It is a state of constant psychological warfare.
Yes. Versus a collaborative culture where people are actually rowing the boat in the same direction, sharing credit and trusting each other.
And here is why reaching this level of linguistic fluency is the ultimate goal. When you have the vocabulary to accurately identify your environment as cutthroat, you are finally empowered to reject it, or at least survive it strategically.
You can name the monster.
Exactly. You can look at your situation and say, I am suffering from burnout, not because I am weak, not because I am failing, but because I am operating in a cutthroat corporate culture that demands a steep learning curve, but offers zero collaboration and treats my calling like a disposable job.
Wow.
That sentence right there is the absolute pinnacle of this journey. It combines the situational awareness of the intermediate levels with the sociological critique of the advanced levels. You are no longer just a victim of the daily grind. You are a philosopher evaluating the very nature of 21st century labor.
Which is just incredible to think about. I mean, let's look at the arc of what we just covered. We started this deep dive talking about the quaint linguistics of saying, I have breakfast instead of I eat breakfast.
A very simple distinction.
And we ended up dissecting the psychological warfare of cutthroat capitalism, the existential dread of imposter syndrome, and the death of the American dream's career ladder. It has been an absolutely massive journey from the kitchen table to the boardroom.
It truly has. We have moved step by step from pouring the concrete foundation of stating simple facts and identities to describing the daily friction of tight deadlines and tasks. We've learned how to articulate the crushing emotional grind of burnout, heavy workloads, and being swamped in the mud. And finally, we have stepped completely outside the house to deconstruct the system itself. questioning the obsolete ladder, analyzing the gig economy, and wrestling with the abstraction of modern knowledge work.
And what we've ultimately uncovered, the real takeaway from all of this, is that the vocabulary we possess directly dictates our ability to process, understand, and ultimately control our professional lives.
It's the key to everything.
If you don't have the words for micromanager or burnout or imposter syndrome, you just sit at your desk thinking you were going crazy or that you were fundamentally broken.
Yes.
The words give you the power to diagnose the disease instead of just suffering the symptoms.
Precisely. Language is not just how we describe our reality, it is the lens through which we view and construct our reality. If you expand the language, you expand your agency within that reality. You give yourself the tools to build a better professional life.
So I want to leave you, the listener, with a final lingering thought, a little something to mull over on your commute tomorrow morning while you are sitting on that train for 45 minutes.
A bit of homework.
Exactly. If our language shapes our reality of work so powerfully, what happens if we actively, consciously choose to discard the outdated vocabulary? What if you refuse to use the old words?
It's a fascinating proposition.
If you started framing your daily grind not as a list of frustrating tasks that you have to deal with for a micromanager, but instead framed it as a carefully curated portfolio of experiences that you are actively managing for your own long-term growth.
Reframing the narrative.
Exactly. Even if you are sitting in the exact same physical office, answering the exact same emails, how would that internal linguistic shift change the way you feel when your alarm goes off at 7 a.m. tomorrow? Are you just a cog in a machine blindly pouring concrete, or are you the CEO of your own portfolio strategically navigating the swamp?
The choice is yours.
The words you choose tomorrow morning might just change your entire career. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the world around you, keep examining the words you use, and we will catch you next time.